United States plans to spend $413 million on counterinsurgency operations in Nigeria and other African countries in 2026. Well, the allocation is contained in the U.S. National Defense Authorization Act under Operation and Maintenance. Although the security budget for the U.S. Africa Command, AFRICOM, comes against the backdrop of the Christmas Day attacks on terrorist hideouts in Sokoto State by Donald Trump, his administration. Well, on Tuesday, AFRICOM delivered a consignment of military equipment to Nigeria security agencies as part of ongoing efforts to strengthen security operations across the country. Well, Dr. Charles Omole will be examining the security implications of the United States Africa Command AFRICOM decision to allocate 587 million naira for counterinsurgency operations across Nigeria and other African countries or for this particular year, 2026. I just started. Glad to have you join me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Newsnight. Yes, you're welcome. What are the security implications, like you just had me read there, of AFRICOM's decision to allocate 587 billion? That's quite some amount for counterinsurgency operations across Nigeria and other African countries in 2026.
Well, I think the starting point really is to, first of all, understand that what Trump is doing is repositioning American foreign policy, not just in Africa, across the world as a whole. I mean, it's reversing a lot of what the United States have done in the past. Take Greenland, for example. 30 years ago, American had about 10,500 boots on the ground, soldiers in Greenland. And in those 30 years, they've drawn them down to just about 200 now. Now, clearly, they were drawing them down thinking Greenland was not that important. Now, Trump wants to take over Greenland. So
by force.
Which means it's changing decades of American foreign policy. Now, when it comes to Nigeria in specific terms, I think he realizes the fact that, forget whether he's looking at Christian persecution, I think that's just a pretext. Whether there was Christian persecution or not, he would have intervened in Africa, in Nigeria in particular. Now, we have to put it in context. The American defense budget for this year is about $905 billion, just under $1 trillion. So this African budget is less than 0.005% of the budget. So it's not really a big sum in the bigger, picture. But the challenge, I think for Nigeria, it's the challenge we've always had is that this year, for example, the government, this Tinubu administration budgeted, I think, about 5.5 trillion for defense. But about 75% of our defense budget goes on salaries and recurrent expenditure.
75%?
Yes. So the problem is we really don't have the sufficient budget to create force multiplier to equip our troops the way they should be equipped. So interventions and support by AFRICOM, for example, will be in areas where our budget couldn't go because they're not paying us the salaries of our staff. So that's not intelligence, and hardware that that are needed. So in a way, it's a good thing if we use it properly. But the key element for us, which we need to be careful about, we need to learn from countries like Kenya and Morocco, who in their engagement with AFRICOM have made sure they did not create dependency, but they created sort of capacity within.
And that is the next question. To what extent does it complement or complicate local security efforts?
Now, it doesn't have to complicate. It will complicate if we create a dependency culture. I've given two examples of two countries who've worked with AFRICOM, and part of the central feature of that cooperation is local capacity is increased so that they don't permanently now rely on foreign intervention, because that now comes to the issue of sovereignty and all kinds of things, that comes with that. But right now, we really don't have the money as a country to equip our troops in a way that effectively can make a difference. The government is trying in terms of the sheer size of the defense budget. But like I said, recurrent
in the African context.
In the African context. Yeah, even in the Nigerian context. But the point is a lot of it is just going to recurrent expenditure.
Like you said.
So a lot of what is needed to actually, multiply our capacity, the AFRICOM intervention can bring it for us. But like I said, it has to be done in a way that enhances our local capacity as well in the long term.
Now, isn't that the crux of the matter, the challenge that Africans are having, probably you could say with their leaders? Are African leaders, and Nigerian leaders in particular, doing the needful to stem the seemingly worsening, as it were, security conditions across West Africa?
Well, you see, the challenge is, when you're talking about security, military action is not a solution to bad governance. So really, the root causes, the causal factors of insecurity is not being addressed across Africa. And I think that's a problem. You can bomb all you like, you can do all the kinetic actions. It doesn't deal with people who are hungry. It doesn't deal with bad governance. All these sit-tight governments that want to stay, presidents that want to stay forever, the coup d'etats. So all that actually are the problems we have in Africa. And the insecurity, it becomes a manifestation of that. So as we are dealing with insecurity, we're also supposed to now be doing our own housekeeping, which is how do we improve governance and democratic accountability in Africa? That is a major question.
Housekeeping, very important issues you've raised. I hope African leaders are listening, not just listening, taking what you're saying to heart. Because the issues of governance, that seems to be the bottom line, while you're having coups in even neighboring countries here. How far, anyway, can this intervention go to checkmate insecurity in Nigeria?
It clearly can help. The classic challenge will be there. For example, part of the problem, for example, we've had in Nigeria is you have the military take action, strike, take over, say, a community, but then they move on to the next community, but there's no policing presence to hold that community, and then it becomes like a, Groundhog Day. You keep going around in circles, retaking the same community you took before. So if care is not taken, the AFRICOM intervention will lead to the same thing, which is they will give us the firepower or provide the firepower to dislodge the bad guys. But then we need policing reform across the country. We need, a solution to ungoverned spaces across the country to now hold those spaces. If we don't do that, then we're just wasting our time.
Merry-go-round.
Yeah, exactly. We're going around in circles.
So what should government be doing to hold, because you're raising issues here, the question of police. Army is not supposed to be involved in what they're doing now, really.
That's true.
How should government get around being able to hold those communities or those areas that have been dealt with in terms of dealing with them? What should government be doing, really?
Well, I think I have it on good authority that the president is serious about policing reform. And we're talking about state police, for example, among other things. There needs to be a policing regime in the country that focuses on needs of these states in specific terms beyond the general Nigerian policing need. Northeast and Northwestern states need specific policing need that caters for these esoteric requirements of those areas beyond the normal law and order policing function that happens in the South. And that can only take place when we have state-focused policing or some form of state policing that enhances the interests of or the priorities of those states.
Which means you agree with state police?
In a form, yes.
In a form. Provided the checks and balances are there to contain them. Thank you so much, Dr. Charles Omole, a security expert and a lawyer. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.